Hey, today I'm going to show you how to use the built-in songwriting tools in EZDrummer 3 and SuperiorDrummer 3 with other drum sequencing plugins like EZDrummer or Mixwave or Bogren Digital. These techniques should apply to pretty much any other drum sampling libraries that I know of. So let's check it out. I'm in Pro Tools. However, these techniques should apply to any DAW. As far as I know, they should all be able to route MIDI between different plugins. So let's get started. I've created two instrument tracks, one with EZDrummer 3 using the Duality 2 kit, and then another one with GGD Invasion, which is a great library as well. So before we do anything else, we need to route the MIDI to go from EZDrummer 3's output into the input of GGD. So how we do that in Pro Tools is we go to our instrument input over here. And if you don't see this in Pro Tools, by the way, quick tip, you can click up here in this little box and make sure instrument is selected. We're going to set the input here to be EZDrummer 3 out, all channels. And then, this is just as important, in EZDrummer 3, we want to come over here to Settings, General, and click Enable MIDI Out. And then the last thing, since we're not going to be listening to the sounds coming out of EZDrummer, just want to turn the volume all the way down on that track. And we're going to set GGD's Record Enable to On, which this may just be a Pro Tools thing, but in Pro Tools we have to do that. Otherwise, it's just going to ignore the MIDI that is fed into it. So now, theoretically, when I hit the kick on EZDrummer, we should hear a kick in Get Good, right? Oh no, that's not a kick. So, of course, in a perfect world, this would all be set up and ready to go, but because different companies use different mapping schemes for their libraries, we have to go into the maps of Get Good and edit them a bit. So I kind of like the TuneTrack mapping just because I've been using TuneTrack products for longer than anything else. So I generally do this anyway. I usually create a MIDI map on whatever drum software I am using that is close as possible to the TuneTrack mapping standard. But in case you've never done that before, this is how we're going to do that. We're going to go to Settings. And as we can see here, this is just the default mapping that GGD loads with. So the first thing I'm going to do is just click Clear Map. So obviously there's nothing there now. Now, the quickest way, in my opinion, to do this, instead of clicking every single key and figuring out which key and putting it in, there's an easier way. If I open EZDrummer here on the left, put this right here, we can go to the Edit Mapping in eDrums/MIDI in. And I did that, by the way, by right-clicking on the drum. And then every drum we hit here, we can see it shows us what it is mapped to. Now, if we go back over here to GGD and click this little red button, that is the MIDI Learn button. And then when I hit the kick here, you can see it automatically mapped it to whatever MIDI note that was. Now in this case, I'm actually going to leave left and right kicks unmapped just because this particular TuneTrack kit only has one kick. So instead I'm going to route that to be ADK, which is the auto double kick. And essentially what that does is it switches between left and right samples automatically depending on the tempo of your song. So I'm just going to set that to be C1 here. So now, that sounds like a kick drum. Cool. So now when we go over here to the snare, this is where things get a little tricky because some drums, as I'm sure you're aware, have multiple articulations that may not always correspond between the two libraries. So in this case, in EZDrummer, we have the center, rim shot, and side stick articulation. But in GGD, we have hit, flam, wires off, rough, side stick. So in this case, I'm just going to route the three that are available to me. Well, actually the two, because there's not a rim shot in GGD. So we're just going to do the center and the side stick. So So I'm going to click over here for hit, make that D1, and then the side stick. I'm going to click the side stick button here. So now there's our main hit. There's our side stick. So usually what I do in this case, if I'm using a library and tune track that doesn't directly correspond articulation-wise, I'll map these alternate articulations to just something either way above the normal range of MIDI. So like in the, seventh or eighth octave, or way down below if I know that's kind of dead space there. And that way, if I do need to put like a flam in, I can just go find that note. Because some of these articulations I just don't use that much, to be honest. So I'm going to fast forward here, and I've actually saved a preset. I've done this before already with this kit, so I'm just going to load that preset right now. Okay, so I have pulled up my preset that I've saved before. You can see here pretty much everything is mapped. One of the trickiest things when it comes to mapping between two libraries is also the way hi-hat articulations are managed, because there's so many different articulations and different companies may call the articulations slightly different things. So that's honestly just kind of a trial and error thing. Whatever is going to make it easier for you in terms of the way you think about these articulations, feel free to experiment with mapping those a certain way. Basically, what I did was went to the hi-hat articulations, and as you can tell, there's a lot more in EZDrummer than there are in Get Good, and I just found the ones that corresponded in name and mapped them directly to GGD, and usually that works for 90% of the time that I'm using these libraries together. We'll get to that more here in just a second. At least in practicality. So now we can see these are triggering the way we want them to. So now let's put it into action. Let's come over here to our Grooves tab. And I've just got a random song right here in the Tune Track Groove library. And I'm just going to put together a quick song in the song builder. Start an intro in here. Throw a verse. And a chorus. And let's listen to that and see how that is translating to our GGD library. Cool. So I'm sure you noticed that the very first groove in there sounded like some stuff was missing, which is perfect to get into why this isn't 100% perfect of a process. And sometimes you got to do a little work on the back end to get it to where you want. So EZDrummer 3, which, side note, this is one of my favorite things about EZDrummer 3 compared to previous versions, is it does have a built-in grid editor. And I actually prefer the grid editor in EZDrummer 3 over Superior Drummer 3, which is why I actually use EZDrummer more than Superior when I'm writing, and then Superior I more use in the mixing stage. A lot of that also has to do with the added humanization features they have. But anyways, back to our topic here. So I've double-clicked this groove to, like I said, open up our groove here in the grid editor. Now, let's listen to that one more time. So it sounds like everything in there is triggering properly except for the hi-hat. So I click on our hi-hat icon here. I can see that these are all supposed to be open edge 4 articulations. But when I click on that, nothing is happening, and that's because I did not map the open edge 4 articulation in GGD because there wasn't a space for it. So the easiest way to fix that is to just click through these and find a similar articulation that is mapped. And right away, I've got one on Open Edge 3. Let's see if we have one on 5. Nope. So 3 should work just fine. So the quickest way to move those is to just click here on Open Edge 4, and that's going to select all the notes on that articulation in this groove. And then, let me do that again. And then we'll click Option if you're on Mac. So Alt, I believe, on Windows, and then hit the up arrow, and that'll move it to our Open Edge 3 articulation. So now let's listen. Cool. And I'm sure you also noticed there was a little bit of a drop out there where it sounded like notes were missing. That, as far as I know, I don't think it's exclusive to Pro Tools, but I've noticed it happens more in Pro Tools than in a few other DAWs I've tried this in. All it is sometimes if you're feeding a lot of MIDI into a plugin this way from another plugin, for whatever reason, sometimes some of those notes get ignored. So occasionally you may hear it drop out like that, but it's nothing to be alarmed about, because when you actually, at the end stage of this, what I always do is move the MIDI out of EZDrummer onto the actual track for Get Good, and then it's not an issue at all. So don't be alarmed there. But the point being, now this groove is mapped exactly how we want it mapped. Another thing I really wanted to quickly hit on, another big difference between drum sampling libraries is the way they handle velocity. Some velocity curves are different in different drum sampling libraries. So you also may notice when you do this, when you're playing grooves that were written for tune track products in other sequencers, it may sound a little off in terms of velocity, which is, it's no one's favorite thing to do, but it's not too hard to just kind of fine tune those velocities as you see fit. So in this case, I'm going to listen one more time. To me, I might highlight all these hats right here and kind of take these lower velocities and move them up just a smidge. Already that sounds a little bit better to my ears. So, like I said, it's not a perfect process. You may have to fine tune things a little bit, but to me, it is a lot faster this way than just going in my built-in MIDI editor in Pro Tools in this case, which I'm sure I'm not the only one that thinks this. I hate the MIDI editor in Pro Tools when it comes to drums, because you don't have the ability to actually name notes or create a drum map, which is one of the reasons why I love using the built-in editor in TuneTrack, because the grid editor is really easy to use. It has quick humanization options. I might as well just show you a quick example of this. If I select all these notes in this groove, and I'm just going to 127 everything. Obviously sounds ridiculous, but great thing in EZDrummer 3. If I come over here to humanize, select that. Now, in this case, it's humanizing them pretty, it doesn't have the same velocity variance as the groove that we had in there, but this is a better starting point, because then I can come in and fine tune. I can make, for instance, I can go to my hi-hats here and make those a little softer. And you'll see this is closer to how we had it. I digress. This is just a way faster way for me to work when I'm songwriting and I don't want to spend forever messing around with velocities in the Pro Tools editor. So anyways, sorry for the rambling. Now what we're going to do, let's pretend that this entire song we've created right here is good to go. We're liking the way it sounds. All we do is select them all and drag them into Pro Tools. And then I can just turn off the record enable on my GGD track here and play it from the top. And I'm done. Obviously, if I need to decide that I need to go in here and edit one or two things, I can, but to me, it's just better to have it 99% of the way there when I drag it in, and this is a good way to do that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it helps your songwriting process as much as it has mine. Take it easy.